Yeah. Okay. Cool.
We're already
All right.
live, so they
Yeah,
can
we're
see
already
me
live. And
watching
now
me
here
pick
we
my
are.
tea.
And now here we are recording. So I'm recording. So
Great.
folks
I think somebody just joined.
for folks who are here, so if you're comfortable with recording and being on screen, great. We welcome you to do that. What I was thinking for the format is that Mana and I love to have people like check in and introduce themselves first, but because we're recording and I want this to be comfortable for folks who may not want to be on the recording, I thought Mana and I would check in first and share some things, and then we'll open it up to questions about the upcoming retreat. And then we will stop the recording. And if you all have personal stories that you want to share, or, more personal questions that you'd like to ask, then we can open it up to that. But so the end won't be recorded. So that's the format that I had in mind. So welcome to those of you who are here with us. I'm also gonna just pop in over here on Facebook real quick and see what's happening. Okay, it looks like it's all working. That's all I really need to know at this point. So hi, I'm here with Mana, also known as Xilverfox, who the two of us are facilitating coming up in September, and we have been developing our curriculum, as well as learning more deeply about why this conscious kink work is so important to both of us, because it's an unfolding journey that we've both been on for several years now. And like any worthwhile spiritual journey, I think every twist and turn in the road, we learn new things and have new discoveries. So it's been fun to witness those as they've happened. So Mana, I would love to have you check in with, maybe you could start us off by just defining what is conscious kink? How would you describe it? Yeah.
It's almost like defining Tantra. That's another one. So I would start with, everybody has their personal journey, of course, within their own kink world. But for me, conscious kink really, the realization of conscious kink and the description of it all happened at the same time, probably about 6 years ago, when I realized that the kink world that I was involved in sometimes doesn't always invite full presence to be part of the experience. And I happened to be with a really juicy person who really guided me through an experience that just opened my eyes. And they were really conscious with wanting my consent, wanting my presence, wanting everything to be kind of just the way that I wanted it, and he was also really aware that what is my intention for this moment that we're sharing together. So he was a really, really great space holder. And I would say those elements were really important, and it opened my eyes to, what, this is how I want to hold space for others as well.
Yeah.
So there's so many, kinks out there in the world, and one of them would be sensation play, for instance. Just as an example, sensation play can be a really intense experience, and I think it's very, very important that everybody involved is super aware of everybody's intention and full consent.
Yeah.
So it's just the first layer. How would you define it, Sarah?
Well, I'm going to define it, and then I'm also just going to jump into a personal story that feels very, relevant. And it's one of the gifts that I've been contemplating of late, things that I've learned from kink that have really changed just the way I live my day-to-day life. So I would define conscious kink as being when we are able to take something from an experience or an aspect of the psyche from the unconscious, sometimes non-consensual realm and into the consensual conscious realm. And so an example that I'll give of that is after my first BDSM workshop, then when I really started learning about these different archetypes of, top and bottom, dom and sub, I started connecting with those archetypes in myself. And I started realizing that my inner dom had been non-consensually leading my whole life. Like I show up in, leadership situation and in just not even leadership situations, but I just show up in situations and end up feeling, especially situations where there is no clear leader, and I will end up like taking over or, taking a leadership role. And I realized that part of me that did that I was never in internal consent around that until I learned about these archetypes. And I started to realize, like, do I actually want to show up in that leadership role, or do I not want to? Like, because it's okay to not want to. It's one of those things of like, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? And so I started realizing that I was just defaulting to like taking things over because leadership was needed, or, I wanted to get something out of the situation, or I saw a direction that the group could take, or, any number of reasons why I would end up taking over. And so now I just check in with myself and I'm like, check in with that inner leader, the inner dom in me, perhaps. I mean, there's all different kinds of leadership, but like, this is the one that I'm working with at the moment for purposes of this discussion. I would check in with, I still do. I check in with that part of myself. Like, do I want to continue offering or do I want to offer my gifts of leadership to this person, to this situation, to this community? And now it's a much more conscious choice inwardly, instead of just showing up in leadership because I can. So yeah, I figured that, yeah. And then, okay, then I'll give maybe the other polarity of that, which is my inner sub, the part of me that is willing to follow and to be submissive and also to listen, because I view listening as kind of this like real, this receiving and this presence. And I started to realize that there were a lot of times in my life where I was non-consensually listening, where I was, listening to someone who was maybe oversharing, or, just in a situation where I didn't want to really be listening anymore. And because listening is and good quality listening is so important to me, I started to realize that part of me, like the non-consensually listening to someone when I was actually checked out, was like not in integrity with that inner sub, with that part of me that loves to give the gift of listening and of full presence and receiving, really fully receiving someone. And so I started to make different choices in my life about that. And, in moments when I would find myself checked out, I would either end the conversation or just let the person know, like, my listening muscle is tired, or, find a way to kind of change what was happening to respect that part of myself that, my inner sub, to respect my inner sub.
Yeah. When you speak of that too, I find it really interesting. When I first started doing dom work, when you speak of a sub being like a really good listener, it surprised me how much of a listener I had to learn to be as a dom.
Yeah, totally.
Right? It's like, it's sort of that yin and yang, like the little bit of white in the black, the little bit of black in the white, but the space holding that a dom does, and the acute listening and awareness. And I think that bringing consciousness, deep consciousness, is definitely to your sub is definitely a piece that I love so much about this work. It's kind of like you both, if it's like a two-person scene, you both kind of go into a whole trance state almost. That anyway, that can happen, where you're acutely aware of everything that happens to the sub, like little hand motions, little eye motions, you know, you're just so focused on, I'm here for you. And so that the sub gets to have that amazing experience. And what they then have to do is clearly state what they can and want to do. So there's this responsibility on both sides, right? That it's not this like, oh, as a sub, I'm just going to surrender all and everything I have to my dom, and they'll just take me on a journey. I think bringing that consciousness and awareness to, I'm going to ask for exactly what I want as a sub, and then negotiate if that's potentially possible for the dom to offer that. And that whole communication is so juicy for me, because it's never fun to just get a blanket right? Like, oh yeah, go ahead. It's like really can be really juicy to get, well, this, but not that. And so, but not so. And I think that's what I love about the whole very present communication that happens within the kink scene world. I love that.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you describe that, I mean, to me, the word that's coming up is intimacy, you know, is this unique organic form of intimacy that you're creating with this other person, where, you know, neither person really knows exactly what's going to unfold, right? But one person is kind of guiding, and the other person is giving their preferences and maybe setting boundaries. But yeah.
Exactly.
And yes, learning to communicate needs. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, and that's a real skill that's just really necessary in our regular life, which we can there's so many different ways to learn that skill or bring that skill forward, but we're definitely focusing on that within the weekend that we're holding space for sure.
Yeah. Let's see, I'm wondering if there's other things that we want to talk about the weekend, or about, I mean, there's definitely other things that I could name that I feel like have been key in my journey. So I guess I'm trying to feel into, should we start talking about the retreat, or should we keep talking about our personal journeys? I could go either way.
All right, we might want to see if there's any questions that come up, if you want to chat them in our meeting chat, then we can see if something alive, because we could talk about all this till the crows come up, or what is that expression? But we might
cows come home. I think is it crows or cows? I think it's cows. Till the cows come home.
Till the cows come home. Well, and just waiting on some questions, but the question that I have, like, how have you seen it transform your world around you once you came out and really stood in this, like, you know what, these are sensations, these are experiences that contribute to my spiritual growth, this kink world. Like, when that happened for you, how did you see your surrounding world react to that?
Yeah, I love that question. How did I see my surrounding world react to that? Well, I don't know if this is how I saw my surrounding world react, but I definitely noticed that. Well, I shared this with you personally, Mana, earlier today, but I'm just going to say it again because I wasn't recorded while all this was while we were chatting earlier, that today I realized in a conversation with a certain friend that the conversations she and I used to have, I would, especially when we were collaborating or co-creating something, I would always like wonder about the power dynamic, like who's going to make the final call about this, and am I overstepping my bounds, and is it okay for me to make this suggestion? Like, and there was this like low level of stress in my system the whole time because I didn't know where those boundaries were. And since then, like over these past several years, I've learned about power dynamics. This particular friend is also a practitioner of conscious kink, and so knows the same kind of language around dom and sub and consent and negotiating boundaries and power dynamics. And so today, when we were talking, having a similar collaborative conversation that we'd had, probably, I don't know, 5 years ago now, it's been a long time. I just realized how much more relaxed my nervous system is having that conversation with her, because I can use that language with her. And actually, another good example is when I started collaborating with Lauren, who is, I'll just go ahead and say her name because, we publicly collaborate together. Lauren and I facilitate Women Naked in the Woods retreat together every year. And when she and I first started meeting about our curriculum for that class, I was asking her about power dynamics and like how we wanted to make decisions. And she just said to me, she's like, "Oh, are you asking if I'm a dom or a sub?" She's like, "Because I'm a switch." And I was like, "Okay, got it. Cool." So, and she's like, "I can be very switchy when it comes to facilitating with someone. You just tell me if you want to lead it or you want me to lead it, and I'll bounce back and forth with you." And I just like, same thing, like my system just relaxed, and I was like, "Okay, great. I know what the dynamic is, and I know that we can clearly define like who's leading this and who's leading that." And again, it was like, like just my nervous system just totally calm down. And if I think about like how much of my life I've spent trying to navigate those dynamics, but without the language around it and without the knowledge that I could make those kinds of conscious agreements with other human beings, like I've just wasted so much energy on stress over the years,
Yeah, why
So
is kink such a taboo topic? It should really
yeah,
just be right front and center. Definitely. It's got
yeah.
it's got such potential. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good segue too for you to talk about your journey in terms of, because I know you like to use the language power with instead of power over, and that switch for you in your journey. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Being a female bodied person in the world, definitely I grew up in Holland, and it's a very liberal country where gender roles are concerned. And still I grew up with the, thinking that and feeling that culturally I'm in a feminine female body. And I am acutely aware of the, let's call it the patriarchy, or the male dominated world around me as a little girl and growing up and all that. And so to come to in my 20s or so to realize like, hey, I was always fighting the boys around me and pushing them away and showing them how strong I was just as strong as them, and then realizing that that's not really what I'm interested in. And I'm really interested in validating the different energies that femininity and masculinity hold, and not having to be the same. They aren't the same. And so that overlap with dom and sub is also, they both have these qualities that are really different. One's not better than the other. But when I first heard the power with versus power over, it was so good to realize that we all have power in the world. We all stand with power, cultural conceptions and such. You know, I'm a white female, and yes, a white male will probably likely culturally have a little bit more power. But there's also brown and black bodies that unfortunately in this world experience very different experiences. And then there is gay and trans and the LGBTQ community that's experiencing a very different culture. So what your sort of status is within the culture matters so much in every conversation that we have and every interaction that we have. So when I first learned to realize that power with, what that means is being aware who you're talking to and being aware where you stand within cultural status. So just and then knowing and realizing how to communicate and how to sort of lower your let's call it pretenses, like fully being aware that if I talk to a marginalized person in some form or fashion, then their experience in the world is very different. So I can then take that step back and realize, like, okay, I'm here to listen, for instance. So that creates a power with, that creates open doors, that creates potential versus not being aware of this and kind of staying stuck in old dynamics. Where I would just stay in the power position, and that of course doesn't mean that I actually have the power. It just means that I don't realize what their mutual experiences are and that they're different. And then within the kink world, that becomes really like theatrically sort of created, where you really like fully pull these parts out of yourself and kind of make a show of them, really embody them outwardly, these pieces that might not see the light of day all the time. So then you can really play, like, what if I take this specific part of myself and turn it inside out and really become that and play with just this element of myself. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not fully aware of the rest of yourself. And I think it's always really good to keep at least like a certain percentage of your conscious awareness present so that you can call yourself back in, be fully, you know, self-autonomous, and can mention, like, this is going too far, this is going too hard, this is not what I was planning, so that you're tracking yourself at all times. So yeah, those are just some things that that I'm really excited about for our weekend. And I think we got a question that I would like to, we can both speak to some. So what to expect and suggestions for navigating the weekend would be appreciated. Yeah, you go.
Yes, I definitely want to hit on that question. But before we go there, I just wanted to keep you talking for a little bit longer because I feel like you're on a roll. And also, I don't want to lose this thread that I would love to have you speak to something that you and I touched on when we talked earlier today about, you know, why this work, kind of like the bigger picture work of bringing this out of the dungeon, so to speak. I mean, not that it's ever going to leave the dungeon. Like, this work deserves to be held in that safe, dark container in a lot of ways. And yet by us bringing this out into, you know, a more, I mean, it's a public event. I mean, we will be vetting and screening people, but we're out here on Facebook talking about it. And
that's right.
So I just wondered if you wanted to share any of those thoughts that had come to you earlier today about this process and why this is, kind of a big, the bigger frame of this, the big deal of this. Yeah.
Right. Because, well, you know, I was sharing earlier with you, Sarah, that I think we all do versions of anti-oppression work, or at least awareness in the world, and knowing that there's quite a bit of damage done and still being done under the umbrella of erotic work. And not just the work, but just personal relationships too. There is so much, let's name it, sexual trauma on this planet. And then to really think about kink, which the world that I was part of, it's very important that people have and find ways to be, like you were speaking, like we had been speaking about, in a dungeon, in a safe, dark place where they're held by peers and where they can experience certain things that are tricky to talk about, are tricky to come out about and be open and honest about, because there is such damage done in the world and you don't want to be misconstrued or misunderstood. So it becomes really important that we do speak about it and we are clear about what our intentions are. And in no way do I find anything wrong with the dungeon world whatsoever. Conscious kink is not necessarily a let's do it more conscious than it's been done before. It's really just a parallel path. And I think that's what we were talking about, that please, let there be dungeons, let there be shadow places where things can be worked out now, under the condition that it's consenting adults, please. Yes, of course. Now, parallel to that can exist this path, which just creates a very open door to people who want in, because also what comes with the dungeon world and a specific BDSM world and leather world and specific, it can feel a little cliquish, right? Like, however am I going to get in there? Like, who do I know that also does this and I could go on an excursion with? It's hard to find those people. So I think we both just really want to open these doors to folks who want to experience this and can bring that home and share it. Like, this is not an elite cliquish thing. We can all have these experiences. Absolutely. Yeah. So Conscious Kink is a parallel road, right, with the BDSM, the dungeon, and we take elements of that and play with those for sure, because they are so fun and juicy.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm so appreciative that you touched on those things. I want to share a couple things. Number one is that I was in San Francisco. Gosh, when was that? Earlier this year? Anyway, I went to a kink event, right in the heart of the city, and walking into that club with, the dark lights and the, someone being tied up and just all of the play that was happening around me. I just, it's funny because I think years ago, if I had walked into something like that, I would have been like, oh, what the hell did I just walked into, But it was so interesting to notice that, like, part of me just deeply relaxed, because I know that in those spaces, like, anything that you want is okay. Like, this deep sense of like acceptance of like the weirdest parts of my psyche. Like, I'm like, I can bring that here and I can push into my edges and I can like, I don't know. So there was like this real deep comfort in that I hadn't experienced. I don't know, just in a totally strange place, like I didn't know anyone in there except for my partner that I walked in with. I didn't know anyone, but it was just this sense of like camaraderie and belonging, I think, and just knowing that the lack of rules are the rules.
Yes, exactly. And knowing what you step into.
Yeah. So I wanted to share that. And then I also, something around the cliquishness and inviting people. Okay, go ahead.
Can I jump on this thing? Because I think when I first realized that everybody can have the kink they want, I was so liberated. I was like, oh, so like if you want to go out on in the woods and lick a tree, that's a kink, eco kink and this kink and that kink. And so that back what you were describing, like, coming to a playful place, like allowing these pieces to come out. And that's what we also offer in this weekend, to really dive into that kind of wild part of yourself and come up with the kink scene that you would like to be in. How about that with consenting adults? And you can literally think of anything, be it, within the parameters of these people can offer this to me. And there goes the negotiation. And I'm so excited for that. Like, what are we going to create? And what is everybody, willing to open up? Because it comes from within. It's like the fantasy, the ideas, the like, can I really step into this? Yeah, you can. Absolutely. That's what we want to create. That's what we're here for. Create that container for you.
Yes, I love that. Oh, I feel like I love
felt it
seeing
too,
you
like,
get excited about it.
my claws are coming out. I have just to be these feathers and furs, and you might know this too about me, Sarah, but I'm one of my kinks is stalking. Oh my God, is that fun? So stalking, again, comes from a very culturally like, oh, that's a real tricky topic. So to play into that and to literally become a wild animal from within and creep and crawl in the dark and try to like find somebody very carefully. Now, I had asked permission beforehand, but they just didn't know when I would pounce on them. They just said within the days of the festival, you can stalk me. And I'm like, yes. This is the most exciting thing I could think of. So all the festival, I'm just circling this, like having them in the corner of my eye. And then one dark night, I got that. So good. So that stuff, like, who does that? You can't do that in your daily life. And that, and then you can bring these pieces back and kind of play with them a little bit within your daily life too. That is absolutely possible.
Yeah. Oh man, that's giving me some ideas. Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, I had this experience in the woods the other night with a friend where we were like super quiet and we had turned off the lights and we were just trying to move through the woods with our feet on the path. Like we were just using our bare feet to tell if we were like on the path or not on the path, and moving and trying not to make any noise. So as soon as like we would crunch a leaf or something, then that meant that we had like gone off the path probably. So it's not exactly stalking, but it was very erotic because of how like sensorily tuned in we were, to our feet and to the night air and to the sounds and to the feelings and each other. And woo, yeah, like just gorgeous experience. Yeah. Okay. So, I feel ready to answer the question in the chat. If you are, how are you feeling?
I'm so ready.
All right, let's do it.
Bring in some water. This is not moonshine, just letting you know.
It's not vodka. Okay, so question was what to expect and suggestions for navigating the weekend would be appreciated. So maybe we should back up and just say that, we're talking about Conscious Kink, but what we haven't explicitly named yet is that we are hosting this retreat September 2nd and 3rd at Dancing Shiva Tantra Ashram in Black Mountain, North Carolina, within Earthaven Ecovillage. And while I'm talking about this, I will put the link in the chat of both Zoom as well as on Facebook, so that if people want to register, there is we still have the early bird rate is available, and the registration fee includes 4 meals and 1 night of overnight accommodations at Dancing Shiva. So it would be lunch on Saturday, dinner on Saturday, breakfast on Sunday, and then lunch on Sunday. And 1 night at Dancing Shiva. The accommodations at Dancing Shiva are quite basic. There are possibilities of sleeping solo, but generally the accommodations would be, you would be sharing a bed with another person, unless you come with a friend, in which case you're welcome to share a bed with that friend if you like, or partner. And what else? Any other logistics that we want to speak to before we get
Well,
to
that
other?
it's, yeah, that it's an indoor accommodation and
Yep.
that you can camp as well. And then you get, I think it was an amount off if you were to camp, and if you commute, that makes it a little bit cheaper as well. Had we talked about the referral of a friend? So
Yep.
if you invite a friend, then you can get referred a friend to our event. You can get $50 off of your fee. So that's a great way to go as well.
Yep. And we
Um,
are also offering a payment plan. So if people
mhm.
wanted to do payment plans, there is a link on the when you go to register where you can just make $150 deposit if you would like to reserve your space in the workshop and would like to do a payment plan. So that's available too.
Yeah, perfect. And then, gosh, yeah, I've lived here at Earthaven, the larger community, for 16 years. And where the event will be held is actually my queer tantric monastery that I'm a part of, which is another neighborhood, but it's within Earthaven. And so navigating the land here is something, and we'll introduce that too. But a little bit about that is that our roads are all gravel. There's no street lights. It's very dark at night, and we recommend to bring flashlights and such because there are snakes. There was a bear the other day on the road. So it's really mountainous and full of life. That's always important to just keep in mind. The roads are very narrow and sometimes very uphill. And so when the moment you get out of the car and you're used to pavement in cities, you'll really notice that there is barely any level flat ground. So that
Yes.
is a part of our life.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Um, I also want to speak to this question about suggestions for someone who's new and not exactly sure what they want or need. That is
Yeah.
a very common thing. And I mean, I'm not new, but I still don't always know. Actually, I want to rephrase that. I've done quite a bit of this work, but I still always like to check in with myself because I realize that even my default answers about what I generally want or need, I still think it's good to check in with yourself every time because you might want something different and you just never know. So we are going to lead everyone through some very basic exercises right at the beginning to help you connect to what you want and need and to help you have an experience of power dynamics. And it may be that, what comes up in a particular connection with another person brings up something new in you. This particular configuration or constellation of humans can bring up something new that you wouldn't have touched into before. And so it's great if you have some idea of, something that you want to get out of the workshop or something that you want to work through, some layer of shame that you'd like to release or work through. That can be great, but it's also totally fine to come just with an open mind and open heart and hopefully some really juicy curiosity about what you might learn and this sense of like a commitment to accept yourself more deeply, to accept no matter what you find when you go in there and dig around, because I think that's really the space that we're offering is a space to accept yourself even more deeply and accept one another even more deeply. So the more you can align with that intention in your heart, I think that that really goes a long way. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And just speaking back to that, what we see in the culture in the BDSM world, we see in movies, or we have certain ideas that it is hard to reach in and that it looks kind of disconnected and maybe not so relational. So what we really offer is a slow entry in. And a lot of what Conscious Kink is open to is a whole menu of things you might be interested in. And it really does not have to include sadomasochism, pain, whips and chains. It can, and how fun if it is. And there's a lot of acceptance for that too. And there is a lot of kink that goes extremely slow, for instance, and that's something to be aware of. There's people that are just like, please go as slow as you possibly can and touch me as soft as you possibly can, because that is what I want and need. So being fully open to what experience would I like, and finding your path in it. There will be plenty of moments to really check in with yourself. And something that both me, Sarah, are really a fan of is like the sacred pause, right? Before you make a decision, and we'll teach that too. Before you step in, to give yourself a minute, like, do I really want this? And there's no shame in that whatsoever. Actually, that's really necessary on this path, is take a pause. It can be a second, it can be 10 minutes, it can be however long you need to know that you come to a full yes, a hell yes, actually, before you do anything. And having a no, we often say, it's like super sexy.
Oh
You
yeah.
have a no. Oh, you have
yeah.
a no. That's hot. Like, I don't want this. I don't know what I do want, but not this. Great. Excellent. Those are some
Yep.
parameters. Now we can work with that,
Yes, I have one of my partners. I just get so turned on when he says no. I just make him say it to me over and over again. I'll be like, can you just say no to me again?
Yeah.
So hot.
Oh, it's so hot. And some kink doesn't even involve any touch. It's just verbal. It's just having to hear certain things that no one ever says to you, or that doesn't get said to you enough, that you want to explore and expand into. Yeah.
I thought one fun thing might be, in terms of like what people might expect, and just to give an example, is I thought it would be fun to describe the little spanking scene that you and I did together at the last workshop that we did. Because it might help give people an idea of like, are you getting your hands ready to like land on my ass? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we did this as a little demo, and it was such a delightful experience. Xilverfox is so attuned. And so I think you'll have to correct me if I'm missing pieces of this, but before we did anything, the first thing was just to have a conversation about what I would like to experience. And, we agreed that I was going to receive some spanking. And I had shared with Xilverfox that one thing that I really love is the calibration and attunement that happens when the person I'm exploring impact play with, when that person checks in with me on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as like how intense that the sensation is for me. And then we were trying to calibrate it so that eventually I think we worked up to like an 8 or maybe a 9. And so, we gathered all of this information, and and then we talked about aftercare. So we had like, a whole plan kind of laid out, and safe words. So we established that I would use yellow or red if there was anything. Yellow meant that, I would want to slow down, and then red meant that I needed to stop. So those were available to me during the scene. And then I think once we'd gone through all of that, Mana you gently kind of not massaged, but like you really warmed your hands up on my butt, and so that I really felt you. You used this really like connecting, full palm, gentle but still firm touch, like this great combination. And then you gave me a few lower impact spanks, and I gave you the numbers associated with them. And then you said, "Oh, thank you." And just were checking in with me, and then, did some more kind of, what do we call it? Like, it's almost like you're spreading the energy, of the impact. It's like the opposite kind of touch. So there's like the impact touch, and then there's like the spreading the energy touch, right? And the contrast of those is so yummy. And really, I think helps our nervous systems just really receive what's happening, because then it's like the contrasting touch is just delicious. And then gradually, as I kept giving you numbers, like worked up, I think we did get up to an 8 or a 9.
You got pretty up there.
Yeah.
And do you
then
remember that moment where I didn't stay in the rhythm, and I took like a little split second before I spanked you again, so that there's also a little bit of that psychological element that weaves in a little bit gently of like, oh, what is there to be expected? I know we had a pattern established, and stepping out of the pattern can really create a level of like this rush of heat, and those feelings that come up of like, I'm being held, but I don't know what's coming next, but I know I'm safe. And that is really that expansive. You can feel your edges, and you can feel yourself pushing up against your comfort levels. And I felt that really strong with you just for that split second. And you were like waiting, and it didn't come, and then it came, and it was like, it does a little bit of that's an edge pushing moment where you can explore yourself, like, how do I act within myself? How do I hold this within myself?
Yep. I do remember that. And I remember really feeling like in that moment, like we got yoked together even more, because I was there waiting for you, and you were there kind of waiting and guiding me, and then giving me, the next spank. And then I was like, okay, here we are. And, and then continuing from there, like that you really taking charge of the rhythm of the experience at that point did invite me to kind of come along with you in a more fundamental way, I think. So and
so the more I know about your wishes, the more the more expansive our experience can be. So the more information I have about you and what you like and how you like it makes my role so much easier and so much more playful, because now I know that I've gotten the yes to go here, not here. And so I know just what the playing field is. And I think that creates a real safe space for both.
Yeah. I love that. And then I think we did some gentle aftercare and maybe just talked a little bit about how it was for both of us. And I just remember feeling so held and a real sense of relaxation. Ooh, I think Allison's here. Let's let her in. I remember feeling a real sense of relaxation and that attunement and intimacy and gratitude for like how you held me. So hi, dear.
Hi.
We are recording, so only speak up if you
You're
want to be
live.
on record.
I didn't want to interrupt your flow. You said
No, you're great. You're great.
Okay.
You did, and it's great.
Totally.
That's what we're here for.
And maybe we can go ahead and introduce Allison as being one of our team members for this retreat. So would you like to introduce yourself and say anything about? I know you're just popping in with us, so if you're not ready to, that's okay too.
Maybe not ready, but
okay.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. So glad.
I would love to speak to the fact that we have a team. Me and Sarah are actually working together with our dear friend Gerald, who is our gracious host and will also be there holding space and holding some activities, because this work is so much juicier when there's just a whole bunch of people tracking and keeping an eye on what's going on, and making sure, friends of ours call it like many masters in the dungeon. There's got to be at least 2 masters in the dungeon in that space who just at all times keep an eye on folks, because sometimes when you enter a space you know, in its terms is in subspace, for instance, where you verbally can't really say what your needs are, and that's something that we can keep an eye on. We will always do our rounds and make sure that yeah, it's there's consent within that. And so those moments where we can really let go and have some interactions, we're very, very juiced about that. We have like a lot of content that I'm really excited about. And some of it will be kind of in that conscious learning, academic-y, heady way. And a lot of it will be body-based. So you really remember it in your body so you can take it home with you.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
100%. That is exactly my experience with this work. That, yeah, it really does. It does really land in the body.
Mhm.
I just want to feel into if there's anything else that we could say to folks in terms of expectations and suggestions for navigating the weekend. I think it's fair to tell people to expect to be guided throughout the
Mhm.
experience. So, I mean, there will be times like towards, on Sunday and the last, kind of the culminating experiences where, you are going to be invited to be your own guide in a way, and to create your own ritual with support from others. But up until that point, we will be providing exercises and structures. It's not like you're just going to walk into this room and be expected to like know something or do something particular. Like there's really going to be structure and guidance throughout. So, and you really aren't going to be expected to have any sort of previous experience or knowledge of this realm at all. So it's totally fine to be coming to this as a newcomer. We just would hope that you have some sort of curiosity and openness to it. I do think another necessity is a willingness to witness other people's nudity, because nudity will not be required in any way, but there will be some nudity and it will be allowed. So it's just important that people are willing to witness the nudity of others. That's important. Yeah, that needs to be said. What else? I think, I think Xilverfox, it was good what you already said about the terrain and helping people to be prepared for kind of the ruggedness. This is a rugged location. It's not, it's not suburban.
No,
So,
no, not at all.
mhm.
Might
Yeah.
have a raccoon walk by,
Yep.
that'll be fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's rugged, but I still find it quite comfortable. I mean, we do
Mhm.
have, there is, running water and, stove and that kind of thing.
Shower.
Yep. Shower. Yep.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Although it would be good we should probably let people know that it's a shared shower. So there's not, if we end up with 15 or 20 people at this retreat, which is probably I think that's around the numbers we're going to end up with, that there's an outdoor shower that can be used at any time. And then there's an indoor shower. So there's really just 2 showers that are available to people. So don't come expecting to like shower all the time or whatever. So I think maybe I should even add that to the welcome letter. Just let people know it's not like you don't have your
So
own
if
private shower or your own
Yeah,
private
and if
bath.
your kink is showering with people, we might have to discuss that. We can come up with something for you. If that is your thing, we'll make something work, but yeah, that'll be
There's two showers, but 3 shower heads.
Right.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. Community showers. You should definitely have a shower with somebody, just maybe not a 3-hour long one.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Allison, do you have any thought? You've been to Dancing Shiva. Do you have any other? That was a good point about the shower. Any other things that was your first trip there recently. So if there's anything else that you remembered noticing that you feel like might be good to tell people who haven't been there before, anything come to mind that might be a good heads up for folks?
I don't think I have anything coming to mind
Okay.
at all. I guess there's I don't have anything. There's a little refrigerator there for people if they want to put anything in there.
Yeah.
And then I mean, it's just gorgeous.
We'll have a hot water kettle
Yeah.
down there for tea or for, hot water and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think everything's there that needs to be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming, Allison.
Yeah.
You're
That's
the only one that we can see the face of, and I don't know if anybody feels like turning their camera on and you feel okay with it. We're still live though. We're still being recorded, and
Yeah, I
But
was
you're-
thinking unless we have other questions, I could go ahead and stop the recording so that if people did want to, be on the screen, then
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Anything else that we feel like we want to capture before we stop the recording? Any other gems that want to come through? Oh, we got some background piano
Yeah, we got
music.
some background piano. I love that.
Yeah.
Bring musical instruments and dress up clothes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And any toys you have.
Yes. Yeah. And I think as far as dress up clothes, I think it's good to note that bring even anything that's like calling to you that wants to come that you don't know why. Like, why am I bringing, this weird hat or something?
Right.
Bring it anyway, because my experience is that you sometimes end up using that stuff for reasons that you wouldn't have ever thought of or guessed. But then you're like, oh, I have this thing and now I'm really glad I have it. So yeah. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and pause us, I think, or stop the live and see if there's any other. And Allison, anything you want to be on record as saying before I stop the recording?
Anything.
Oh, freedom and liberation.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Freedom and liberation.
I love it.
Curiosity. Yeah. Come with curiosity and openness to let all potentials unfold,
Yes.
Well, I got freedom,
All right.
liberation, curiosity, all potentials unfolding.
Yeah. Ooh, I have one more thing, which is, well, I put the link to sign up in both of the chats, and that we are actually planning a master class on Conscious Kink where we'll go over some of this. We'll actually maybe go over some of what we already shared, but we'll also be offering experience too, like a guided experience. And it's going to be actually on July 31st in the evening. So if people want to put that on their calendars, we'll have the information forthcoming about that in the next couple days. And that's just going to be a free offering to help more clearly communicate like what it is that, this work consists of and how it might benefit people. So that's something else that's coming up.
Yeah,
all right.
good.
I'm going to stop.
I do have one more thing.
Oh,
I
go
have one
ahead.
more
Do
thing
it.
to say for
Do
the
it, do it.
recording.
Yes.
For the recording. I was gonna say that that I really love the container that you both hold, and I think that it should be known that it is a really loving container, and with lots of I mean all the things, just the love and support and compassion and just like super well-rounded experience that I think that's
Thanks,
come to be
Allison.
held in all of that. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Ooh, and maybe I'll just piggyback on that because Allison, I know this is something that's important to you, and it's something that Mana and I have talked about, and that, I don't know, as you were talking, I was like, I just want to name this. The balance, striking that balance between holding tenderness and compassion and depth for trauma and for healing, and how gentle we need to be sometimes around really leaving people plenty of room to have whatever the feelings are that are coming up, and then also creating a space where playfulness and joy and lightness is welcome, and really being able to bring in both of those energies in a way that's balanced and where they both show up at appropriate times. So I'm just wanted to name that it's a thing.
Well, then I want to name one too, that your Eros is also welcome.
Yes.
So, that we'll have guidelines set up, and our previous event did not have explicit sex to be part of the experience, so that needs to be said. But Eros and erotic expression is very welcome. Not for everybody is kink erotic, but for some people it is. So bring it. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, and we will have clear boundaries around what is and is not allowed in the space, and even where it's allowed in the space. I think we'll establish that in our opening circle so that everyone's really clear about that. So yes. But yeah, turn on and Eros is welcome throughout, because that's a huge part of what we're doing and working with that vital life force energy in each one of us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yum.
Oh, I'm excited now.
Yeah. All right, friends. Thanks for being here. I'm going to hit pause, and then we can, chat about whatever else comes up. Good night, y'all.
Okay.